Aloha, everyone. Good morning. Welcome aboard. My name is Arthur. I'm going to be your pilot today. Can everybody hear me all right? Not yelling in anybody's ears? Very good. All right, so before we get too far, a little pro tip for you here. This little microphone needs to be able to pick up your voice over all the other noise going on around us. There is plenty of it, so if it's not directly in front of your mouth, it's really going to struggle to pick up your voice, okay? Even just a little bit off makes a huge difference on whether or not we can hear you. Having said that, I'm going to leave your mics on throughout the flight. Please feel free to ask me questions along the way. But if you can't hear yourself in your headset, I can't hear you either. The first place to check is going to be that mic. Also, if we cannot handle the responsibility of having a live mic, I will shut them off. So, just fair warning. There will be 2 times through the flight where I actually need to isolate myself. First is going to be in just a moment so I can get our clearances to get us off the ground and on our way. Second time is going to be just before we come back in for our landing. I'll let you know when that's going to be so you're not trying to ask me questions. It'll seem like I'm ignoring you when in fact I just can't hear you. Throughout the whole flight, there's going to be a bunch of radio chatter going on in my headset that y'all are spared from. So if I'm in the middle of saying something, all of a sudden I stop talking, if I seem distracted for a moment, or if I repeat myself, or if you ask me a question and it seems like I didn't hear you, understand that there can be as many as 15 or 20 other helicopters out there at any given time. We're all trying to communicate, coordinate with each other so we don't wind up bumping into each other. Having said that, I will do my very best to balance my narration along with answering any questions that you might have, all making my own outgoing radio calls and listening to incoming radio calls. Can be kind of a lot sometimes, so I do apologize in advance if I fail at that at all. I just ask that you bear with me on it. I know my ground crew does a great job of going over all the safety procedures with you, but it can be loud out here. There can be a lot to it, and I would far rather answer any questions for you now than to try to do so in the midst of an emergency. So are there any questions for me about any of the things that y'all talked about on the ground? Everybody feels good about that stuff? Okay. Well, in that case, unless there's any objection to it, I'm going to go ahead and sign off with you now. Once we're airborne, I'll be back with you. We'll get the show on the road. Sounds good?
I can kind of hear.
that, we are off the ground and on our way. It is a beautiful day here on the island of Kauai. Very much looking forward to getting out there and showing you all around. Now, the purpose of this flight is to get us out to those remote locations around the island, those hard to reach, inaccessible areas. In order for us to get there, we're going to need to leave the most populated, easiest to access area. The main points of interest along our tour today are going to be the Waimea Canyon, the Napali coastline, and the Waialiali crater. We're going to be seeing these sites in a clockwise rotation around our little island, but along the way there are a whole slew of additional interesting things to see along. First stop along the tour today is going to be the Manawaiapuna waterfall system, which is situated within the Hanapepe Valley. In order for us to get there, we're going to be flying up along Haupu Ridge. So Haupu here separates the east side of the island from the south shore. Once we've crossed Queen Victoria's Profile, which is the largest portion of the ridgeline just directly out ahead of us, we'll be getting a great view of Koloa and Poipu over on our left. Prior to that, also coming up on our left, is going to be Kipukai. So Kipukai is a privately owned little bay. It's owned by the Rice family, who have been in Hawaii for quite a long time. Long enough, in fact, that they've gotten one of the main streets in Lihui named after them. That would be Rice Street, which is named for the family, not the food. And from here, we can see a little piece of their driveway, which cuts through the saddle, or the low point in this ridgeline, and is the only access point on land to get down to this beautiful little bay. So as you can imagine, Kipukai here is typically pretty quiet. It has made appearances in a handful of movies, though, including 6 Days, 7 Nights, and The Descendants. Now, in addition to owning Kipukai, the Rice family also own Kipu Ranch, which is this large open area over on our right side. Kipu Ranch is a working, functioning cattle ranch. It's also home to the Kipu Ranch Adventures. They do ATV tours and zip lining. This area has made appearances in movies such as Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones, and Raiders of the Lost Ark. We've crossed Queen Victoria's Profile. Over on our left, we can see Poipu, which extends along the coastline from Mahalapu, just slightly behind us, out to the Hyatt, where Shipwrecks Beach is. Just around the corner from Shipwrecks would be Branikes and Poipu Beach Parks, onto the Waialahi, the Sheraton, Lauai Beach Resort, Spouting Horn, and Allerton Gardens. Just inland from Poipu is the town of Koloa, and if we look to the left of Koloa town, left of the solar farm there, coming up on our left now is the Koloa Sugar Mill. From 1839, tapering off and officially ending back in 2009, sugar was a major industry here in Hawaii. Here on Kauai, we had 3 main mills. We had the Koloa Mill down on the south side. Out on the west side, the Keikaha Mill. The entire town of Lihui was actually built around the Lihui Mill. In spite of being the smallest of the 3, it was actually the Koloa Mill, which was the last to remain in operation. They closed their doors in 2009 as the last mill, not just on Kauai, but in the entire state to do so, officially marking the end of sugar as an industry here. As we cross the tail end of Haupu, coming into view up ahead of us is the tree tunnel, so we can start to see it now. Tree tunnel is your main access to Koloa and Poipu. Really beautiful, iconic little stretch of road here on the island. One and only time you're going to hear me say this today, but it's actually a lot prettier from the ground than it is from the air. Now you can access the tree tunnel via Kamo'ali'i Highway, which will be your main artery headed southwest out of Lihui. Now shifting gears here just a little. Throughout the state of Hawaii, our prevailing weather patterns will move from east to west. Due to the central mountainous regions on each of the islands, a lot of that rain, that weather will be captured up on the mountaintops, caused to rain off before making its way to the west sides of the islands. That results in the eastern and northern facing shores of these islands to be very green and lush, while the west sides will typically be a bit drier, a little more arid. Now, we're going to see that transition as we make our way around the island today. But in just a moment, we'll be seeing what Kahili, which is the peak just off to our right here with the 4 nubs up on top of it. That is the southernmost peak of the Waialiali mountain range, and in a moment we'll be seeing what it does with all the rain that it captures up there. In the meantime, though, over on our left side, we've got the town of Kalaheo. Beyond Kalaheo, it's a little bit hard to see because it's sitting in the shade of a cloud, is the Kauai Coffee Company. The Kauai Coffee Company is surrounded by 25,000 acres of coffee fields, making it the largest coffee plantation in the United States. They do offer tours of their facilities as well as free samples of their coffee. Now beyond Kauai Coffee Company, following our eyes along the coastline, would be Port Allen. So Port Allen is where the catamaran tours set out from. It's Captain Andy's, Holo Holo, Blue Dolphin, all those folks. Just on the far side of Port Allen would be Salt Pond, where traditional Hawaiian sea salt is still made, cultivated to this day. And if a helicopter tour isn't quite enough to get your adrenaline fix, you could always jump out of a perfectly good airplane from 10,000 feet over the island with Skydive Kauai, who operate out of the Port Island Airstrip. As for us, we are arriving in Hanapepe Valley. We're going to be descending into the valley, headed upstream to check out Mana Vaiapuna Waterfall. So, Mana Vaiapuna is also known as Jurassic Falls, as it made an appearance in the original 1993 movie, Jurassic Park. So this is the waterfall that they land at the base of when they first arrive on the island. As we make our way upstream, we'll be seeing some additional waterfalls flowing down each of the valley walls, which are largely dependent on recent rainfall and are therefore somewhat seasonal. However, Mana Vaiapuna, its associated waterfalls upstream from it, will actually flow all year long, and that is thanks to that rain captured up on the peaks of Kahili. Now, Mana Vaiapuna is going to be coming into view just off the right side of our nose, right about now. Just over 250 feet tall, Mana Vaiapuna here is clearly spectacular. Really beautiful waterfall. In my opinion, some of the waterfalls upstream from it, while maybe not quite as tall, are really just as beautiful. And in a moment here, we're going to be heading upstream along my favorite string of these waterfalls, which are the Kahili Falls. But again, Mana Vaiapuna, absolutely stunning. So as we come around here, out ahead of us, one waterfall out there. As we approach them, we're going to start to see more and more waterfalls showing up. So these are the Kahili Falls, sometimes referred to as the Five Sisters. Up above the Kahili Falls are the Kahili Bowl. Throughout the Kahili Bowl, we can see a large number of these standing dead trees. These are ohia, which is a variety of hardwoods that are native to these islands. Well, these ohia in particular were killed off back in 1992 when the island was hit by Hurricane Iniki, coincidentally while they were filming Jurassic Park. Now, Hurricane Iniki brought with it sustained winds of 145 miles an hour and gusts in excess of 225 miles an hour. At that time, there's approximately 50,000 residents here on the island. That storm caused $3.6 billion in damages to property and infrastructure. That price tag, of course, does not even begin to take into account the devastation which was caused to the forests here on the island. A lot of the trees that we were seeing in the Kahili Bowl were between about 300 and 500 years old. So while this year marks 30 years since Iniki hit Kauai, we are still quite a long ways off from a full recovery to the island's forests. However, just to give you a sense of what $3.6 billion in damage does mean to a community of 50,000 in 1992 terms, 1 in 3 homes here on the island was completely destroyed by that storm or rendered uninhabitable as a result of it. The eye of that hurricane went straight over the center of the island, so nowhere on the island was spared from that storm. However, it was the south side which was hit the hardest. Left the island without running water for about 3 weeks and without electricity for almost 3 months in areas. Pretty major event here on the island. Now from here, we are going to be continuing westbound. We're going to be moving out of Hanapepe Valley and into Olokeli Canyon on our way to the Waimea Canyon. As we make this transition, we're going to be moving on to the west side of the island, as well as moving into the oldest part of the entire state of Hawaii, geologically speaking. As we do, we're going to see a fairly dramatic shift in the landscape, as well as getting a glimpse into just how these islands have been formed. So out in the distance now, we can see the Waimea Canyon. Coming up just ahead of us is going to be Olokeli Canyon. Now within Olokeli, we can see these horizontal lines which extend across large sections of the canyon walls or faces. These are exposed layers of lava rock. Now, for most people, you mentioned Hawaii, one of the first images that's going to come to mind is volcanoes, which is understandable as we are a volcanic island chain. Something that's not quite as commonly understood, though, is that this island chain is actually a single mountain range which extends upward from the ocean floor and breaks the surface in several points that we think of as islands. Well, this island chain, this mountain range, however you want to think about it, has been formed over millions of years through the movement of the Pacific tectonic plate and a fixed point below that tectonic plate known as the Hawaiian hotspot. So the Hawaiian hotspot has actively been pushing magma up to the surface for approximately 70 million years, creating this mountain range one peak or island at a time, while the tectonic plate has been shifting its way northwest. Well, that combined activity has created a mountain range which today extends over 1,600 miles and consists of more than 130 different landmasses, different islands. But when we think of Hawaii, what most of us are thinking of are the 8 major islands at the southeastern portion of that mountain range. Of those 8 major islands, Kauai is the oldest. It was formed in 3 periods of volcanic activity, that first period occurring just over 5 million years ago and creating the west side of the island, so where we are now, as well as the northwest coast, which is today the Nepali coastline, which we'll be seeing shortly. Now, at that time, it was a very even sloping plain up to the caldera, the volcano, but as the tectonic plate shifted away, the volcanoes here on this island went extinct, erosion set in, and over millions of years, rain creating streams and rivers have been hard at work carving away at the landscape to create these canyons, these valleys, while leaving the ridges that we see here today. In just a moment, we're going to be seeing how water can really affect this landscape. So running into the main body of the Waimea Canyon are 3 spurs or ventricles. We're now venturing up into this first spur known as Waialae, and as we do, if you keep an eye to the right, you'll see the top in a whole series of waterfalls which tic-tac their way down to the canyon floor and have been created by the Waialae stream in the process of forming this portion of the canyon. Now, looking at Waialae, we can also see these layering effects of lava flow over lava flow, which builds these islands up over hundreds of thousands, even millions of years before the tectonic plate will shift away, the volcanoes go extinct, erosion sets in, and then over the course of millions, even tens of millions of years, these islands are eroded away at before eventually disappearing below the surface of the ocean. Now, the Waialae stream,
the Grand Canyon of Hawaii.
It is the Grand Canyon of the Pacific, coined by Mark Twain. Very good. Yep. Now, if you've ever been to the Grand Canyon in the southwestern United States, you'll know that our little canyon here is minuscule by comparison. However, it is most certainly a canyon. It has its own sense of grandeur, and I can absolutely understand where that comparison would be drawn. Interestingly, though, Mark Twain never actually visited Kauai, so somebody must have described it to him pretty well, because I'd say that's a fairly accurate comparison. Now, moving out of Waialae, we're now into Kauai. This is the middle and the deepest of the 3, or the largest of the 3 spurs to the canyon. Just beyond Kauai, Po'omau. Once we pass through Po'omau, we'll be coming up on the Waipo'o Falls. Really beautiful 3-section waterfall comprised of an upper 20-foot section, a middle 100-foot section. The lowest section of this waterfall is just over 400 feet tall. It is a prominent feature within the canyon, visible from a number of different lookouts, all accessible via the Waimea Canyon Road. The Waimea Canyon Road starts out in the town of Waimea, and on the west side of Kauai, and will take you up along the rim of the canyon into the Waimea Canyon State Park, and then on into the Kokee State Park. Along the way, there are numerous lookouts, different points where you can stop, check out the canyon from different angles, different vantage points. Once you get up into the Kokee State Park, there are a huge number of hiking trails where you can explore different areas within the canyon itself, the Alakai Swamp, even a number of ridge trails that will take you out along the various ridges of the Nepali coastline. One of the most popular hikes you can do up here is called the Canyon Trail, or the Waipo'o Falls Trail, which will take you 1.8 miles from the rim of the canyon right to the top of the Waipo'o Falls. And Waipo'o Falls is going to be coming into view in just a second. It's just off to our right, behind this ridgeline with the splash of green, the rock with the puka, or the hole in it. Coming into view now is Waipo'o Falls, which is looking a little sparse at the moment. We could use some rain, but it is still flowing. At the top of the two sections of the top two sections of the falls, we can see some folks hanging out up there, at least one person. And then looking to the left of the falls is the tail end of the trail. So along this open ridge line here, we can see some hikers making their way into and out of the falls. And as we come around here, just up above us on the rim of the canyon, we can see some folks hanging out at one of the lookouts up there, which is the trailhead for that trail. From here, we're going to be heading upstream through Po'omau, headed for the Napali coastline. Have you all been up to the to the Waimea Canyon and Kauai State Park? Well, if you plan on coming up here, you decide to do the Waipo'o Falls hike, and you're still feeling sprightly after getting to the falls, there's a fantastic little picnic area. If you continue on, there's a great place to stop and have lunch. It is brought to us thanks to the Boy Scouts. We got this little picnic bench just here to the left. So. Now, where Wailai was formed by a single stream, Po'omau here has been formed by a pair of streams. The confluence, the meeting point of these two streams is preceded by a whole series of pretty incredible waterfalls. We're going to take a turn or two at these falls before heading out to the Napali coastline. Now, while we're back here, if you look at the canyon walls, especially through the grassy areas, you can see these kind of crisscrossing lines going back and forth, back and forth. These are all goat trails. Now, since people have been arriving on these islands, we've been bringing animals with us. Polynesians originally introduced pigs to these islands. Today we have feral pigs throughout the state. European sailors brought in goats back in the late 17 and early 1800s. Today we have feral goats throughout Hawaii. And then back in 1969, a group of 30 black-tailed deer were brought to the island of Kauai. Today we have a population of approximately 700 of these black-tailed deer. And in addition to the goats, the pigs, and the deer, we also have feral cattle. Now, obviously, those four animals have been introduced. However, we do have two native mammals to the state of Hawaii. We have the native Hawaiian bat and the Hawaiian monk seal. And both of those animals actually perfectly illustrate how life has naturally arrived here on the islands. And this is true for both plants and animals. But either you arrived on wing or by wave. So either you flew here, or you swam here, or you were carried by something that did. As a result of that type of arrival, most native life, animal life here, were seabirds. But that's not exclusively the case. As I said, we do have a native Hawaiian bat. We've also got the nene goose, which is our state bird. We've got a couple of different duck and geese species. Prior to the Polynesians' arrival, there were actually a species of ducks here in Hawaii that were between 4 and 6 feet tall. Pretty wild. We've also got a variety of different forest birds, which are believed to have evolved from the common finch. The thinking is that a flock of finch were swept up in a storm, deposited on one of the earlier islands, and over time have evolved to become their own unique species, some endemic or only occurring in the state of Hawaii, some endemic to specific islands. But you can definitely see a trend there. All of those animals I just listed do have wings. Now from here we're going to be heading out onto the Napali coastline. We're going to be jumping right into the heart of the largest valley along the coast. It is Kalalau Valley. Just off to our left, you may be able to see an open dirt patch on the ridgeline there. That is just beyond the end of the Waimea Canyon Road, and the Kalalau Lookout, and is the trailhead for the Alakai Swamp Trail, which will take you out and overlook Wainiha Valley in the North Shore. We're going to be hopping this ridgeline, and we'll be right into the largest of the Na Pali Coast valleys. All right, and welcome to Kalalau. So, Na Pali translates to the cliffs, and this next section of the island really could not be more appropriately named. It is 17 miles of truly rugged coastline consisting of sea level valleys which are separated by up to 3,000 and 4,000 foot cliffs. Again, this is the largest of the Na Pali Coast valleys. We're going to be heading all the way offshore. We'll come out and around, and we'll get a good view of the Na Pali coastline here. Welcome to Na Pali, where the Waimea Canyon has been formed solely by erosion. The Na Pali coastline here has been a bit of an artistic collaboration between erosion, which has carved out each of these valleys individually, and seismic activity, or earthquakes, which has given the coastline its overall appearance. Now, this very immediate edge is a result of massive earthquakes which have occurred over the millions of years that these islands have been built up by volcanic activity. So the largest of these earthquakes have actually sheared off whole sections of this coastline, dropping it down to the ocean floor, which is nearly 17,000 feet below the surface, giving it that very abrupt and dramatic edge that we see here today. Now as we come around, out on the horizon, we can see the islands of Lehua and Niihau. So Lehua is a smaller kind of triangular island, which is directly out ahead of us, and Niihau is the larger island to the left of that, extending from the flats out to that bump on the far left side there. As we continue around here, just out to our left is Honopu Valley. Honopu is another one of the larger valleys out here. There are, as you can see, two beaches down below Honopu. They both back themselves up into sheer cliffs. Coming down from the top is really no option either, as it is nothing but sheer cliffs. So there are precisely 0 trails that will get you into that valley. Very few people make it back there. Those that do are helicoptered in and are brought back there for the purposes of working in the field of conservation. So they are back there protecting bird species, which over time have evolved to nest on the ground or in little burrows, because without any predators to contend with, they really had no reason to build nests in trees, right? So, separating Honopu from Kalalau is this section we call the cathedrals. So made up of these razor-sharp ridges, these towering spires, the cathedrals have been awe-inspiring to the degree that they've earned themselves this name of reverence. They do stand as a backdrop to the Kalalau Beach. So just below us here, Kalalau Beach is the end point for the Na Pali Coast or Kalalau Trail, which extends 11 miles from Ke'e, the flat spot at the point out to our left, along the coastline, winding up just below us at the beach of Kalalau. As we make our way along the coastline here, I'll try to point out different areas where we can see the trail. And the first place that we're going to be able to see it is coming up just ahead of us here. Just along the coastline is this red hill. Right along the spine of that hill runs the tail end of the Na Pali Coast or Kalalau Trail. So you can see a hiker off to our right here, making their way around, a couple of them. The trail then cuts its way through this little bowl. Out ahead of us, you got these 3 ridges running parallel to each other, about the midpoint up. You can see a line cutting across each of them, and a portion of the trail as well. And then out ahead of us, the trail drops down, follows the cliffside just before it drops off into the ocean. So this trail is regularly voted among the top 10 most beautiful hikes on Earth. Unfortunately, it just as frequently makes the list for top 10 most dangerous. Now, part of that is that certain sections of this trail are in fact fairly treacherous. But moreover, it has to do with the isolated nature of this stretch of coastline. There is little to no cell service out here, and after hiking 11 grueling miles to get into that pristine beach, the last thing most people want to do once they get there is turn around and hike 11 miles back out again. So for the most part, people that do this hike are going to do it over several days. They'll hike in, spend a couple days out at the beach, and then they hike back out. So if something goes wrong, if somebody goes missing, it can be several days before anybody even knows to start looking, which in a search and rescue context, really not the best starting point. Having said that, every year, nearly 750,000 people will hike some portion of the Nepali Coast Trail. And for the vast majority of those people, Hanakapiai is going to be their destination. Hanakapiai is the first major valley that you would come to along the coast. From Ke'e, it is a 2-mile hike to get you to the beach of Hanakapiai. An additional 2 miles inland will get you to the Hanakapiai Falls. That is a round trip of 8 miles, and today permits are required both to park out at Ke'e as well as to do the hike itself. Interesting little side note about Hanakapiai Beach here. Just a few months ago, there was actually no beach here at all. It was just a rocky little stretch of coastline, and that's actually something that happens nearly every year. During the winter months, we see some pretty massive surf up here on the North Shore, and without a protected barrier reef outside of it, this stretch of coastline is absolutely pummeled by these massive waves, which will suck all that sand out, leaving us with a rocky little stretch of coast until spring rolls around. That sand will get redeposited as those swells start to subside. We'll have a nice sandy and freshly scrubbed beach for the summer months, and then that process repeats itself. Now, this does bring us to the end of the Nepali coastline and the beginning of the North Shore. Before we completely move off of the coast, we'll come back around for one more look down the coastline. So as we come around here, we got one more look at Lehua Ni'ihau. We can really see that transition between the dry side of the island on the far end with the browns, the grays, and tans, back here to the green, lush side of things up on the North Shore. At the back of Hanakapiai Valley, we can see the Hanakapiai Falls there. And as we continue our turn, just up ahead of us now is Makana Ridge Line, better known as Bali High, made famous by the classic movie South Pacific. Just on the back side of that ridgeline there is Limahuli Valley. Limahuli Valley is home to the Limahuli Gardens, one of a network of gardens throughout the U.S. known as the National Tropical Botanical Gardens. We've actually got 3 of these gardens here on Kauai, down on the south side, Allerton and McBride, up here on the North Shore, Limahuli. And all 3 of these gardens are fantastic. Limahuli is really special, though, in that it focuses largely on native and endemic plants. They do have a huge catalog of rare and endangered plant species as well, and they do offer tours of their gardens. And just beyond Limahuli is Hyena Beach Park. That's where we have the lines of parked cars off to our right now. Just on the Mauka or inland side of the parking lot are the wet and dry caves. And then coming up just below us is Tunnels. So the beach at Tunnels is named for the extensive network of arches, caves, caverns, and tunnels which are in the reef structure down below the surface. Through the summer months, this is an incredible dive spot. Most of the features are down about 60 feet deep, so scuba diving is kind of the best way to see it. But really, any way you can get your head underwater up here is absolutely phenomenal. This brings us to Hyena. This little stretch of coastline is where I've been saving my tips to buy a place. Sad to say, though, I'm probably going to be saving for the rest of my life, as these are some of the highest real estate prices in the entire country. Growing up here, this was a fairly quiet, local area. Before my time, it was home to Taylor Camp, a hippie commune that was up here. But today, folks like Pierce Brosnan, Alanis Morissette, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar all have homes up here. So it's kind of become home to the rich and famous. Now, while I will keep saving, I'm certainly not holding my breath on being able to afford anything up here anytime soon. But such is life. Just beyond Hyena, we have Wainiha. That's that little strip of sandy beach with water on both sides of it. Beyond Wainiha, Lumahai, a long straight section of beach there. Hanalei Bay directly out ahead of us now. Princeville to the left of that. Beyond Princeville, Kilauea. Hanalei is famous for all kinds of reasons. One of the more obscure reasons these days is that it was the inspiration behind the song Puff the Magic Dragon. Puff's head is laying on Lumahai Beach here. His neck extends up and around. His body is the mountain of Namolokama at the back of Hanalei, with his tail coming down and around on the other side. So in the song, Puff the Magic Dragon lived by the sea down by the town of Honolulu. Well, it was actually inspired by Honolulu, and there he is. Throughout Honolulu Bay, you'll see a large number of these square and rectangular patties coming up here. So these are taro fields, or lo'i. So taro, kalo, was a major staple in the ancient Hawaiians' diet. It's a starch, somewhat similar to a potato, although it grows a lot more closely akin to rice in these very wet conditions. Today, almost 90% of the taro consumed in the state of Hawaii is grown right down here in Honolulu. So Honolulu is famous for its taro. More specifically, though, it's poi, which is the main dish made out of taro. One cool thing about these lo'i, these taro patches, is that it sets up a habitat suitable not only for the agricultural crop of taro, but also for a number of different wildlife species, including freshwater fish, shrimp, and a number of different bird species. Now, as a result of that, the far side of Honolulu is all a national wildlife refuge. So it's one of those rare instances where agriculture and ecology actually overlap, coexist, and work together. The town of Honolulu itself, fantastic, walkable little town, full of shops, restaurants, bars, galleries, boutiques. Depending on which end of the main strip you're on, you'll be between about 2 and 4 blocks from the ocean. It's a great place to grab a bite to eat, a plate lunch, or a snack. You can take it down to the beach. The beach along Honolulu Bay has just about anything you could be looking for activity-wise, from swimming, surfing, snorkeling, strolls down the beach, sunbathing, building sandcastles, really whatever you're into, you can find it down in Honolulu. But as for us, we're going to be making our way inland from here. We are headed towards the Waialeale crater via Namolokama and the Honolulu River Valley. So Namolokama is the largest of the 3 mountains that stand as a backdrop to Honolulu. This mountain is just over 4,000 feet tall. At its top, the top of it is flat and tilted slightly in the direction of Honolulu. So that slight tilt supports a single waterfall going down its face all year long, known as Waiole. Waiole, which we can see going down the middle of the Namolokama out ahead of us, is accompanied by a whole multitude of additional waterfalls, giving enough rainfall, which this mountain is prone to seeing a lot of. These additional waterfalls are made evident by the lines, the streaks, and scars going down the face of the Namolokama here. But again, all year long, Waiole, which translates to happy waters, will make its way down the face of the Namolokama. From here, we're going to be heading for what we call the high saddle, which is this ridgeline just right out ahead of us here. It's going to put us into the Honolulu River Valley and the Halilea Forest Reserve. As we come around the bend here, pretty much everything we're going to be seeing working our way inland is going to be part of the Halilea Forest Reserve. It's all state-owned, protected forestry land. Down below us, the Honolulu River. The Honolulu River is fed by Namolokama as well as Waialeale. Both of these mountains do see a tremendous amount of rainfall every year. As a result of that, this little river gets a whole lot of water flowing through it, which makes it fairly prone to flooding. Now, when the Honolulu River floods, it will cut off access to Honolulu as well as the rest of the North Shore beyond from the rest of the island. If you've not yet had a chance to get up to Honolulu, in order to get there, you're going to be coming down a large hill out of Princeville. At the bottom of that hill, you'll be crossing over a little one-lane bridge that is crossing the Honolulu River. And then there's an area between the bridge and the actual town of Honolulu, which is some very low-lying areas and what will physically flood. That flooding is typically pretty well forecasted. Generally speaking, it's not going to last for more than 24, maybe 48 hours, and it almost never occurs outside of the winter months. So for the folks that live up on the North Shore, it's really just a normal part of life. For the kids that live on the North Shore, however, it is the Hawaiian equivalent to a snow day. No school for a day or two. So when it starts raining up here, you have kids around the North Shore, fingers crossed, eyes closed tight, just hoping and praying it rains enough. Close that bridge down, keep them out of school for a day or two. As we continue upstream, we are getting closer and closer to Mount Waialeale, which, as I mentioned, gets a lot of rain. It gets so much rain back here that it is among sometimes the wettest spot on Earth. So this area is prone to seeing an average annual rainfall of 451 inches. That is 39.5 feet of rain, about a 4-story building's worth. And that's just the average. Maximum recorded rainfall for this area is over 600 inches in a single year. And those numbers are observed or recorded at the top of the Waialeale crater. That crater is the remains of the original caldera, that volcano that was the primary driving force in forming the island, and is going to be our next and final stop along the tour today. As we cross over this next ridge, that's going to put us back onto the east side of the island. Coming into view out ahead of us is going to be Haupu. Haupu is where we started our tour, out ahead of us here. Just off to the left, the airport, but before we head back there, we're going to hook in and around to the right, check out the Waialeale crater. So as we come around the bend here, we're going to be looking into the heart of the Waialeale crater. So in the shade of the clouds, out ahead of us is the back wall of the Waialeale crater. So that wall out ahead of us is just over 3,000 feet tall. The base of the crater stands about 2,000 feet in elevation. The upper rim, shrouded in clouds this morning, over 5,000 feet above sea level. And when this island was an active volcano, it was a large shield volcano, so it was basically a big dome. But as the tectonic plates shifted away, the volcanoes here on this island went extinct, erosion set in, and at some point in the distant past, this eastern wall collapsed in on itself. That opened up a perfect access point for us helicopter pilots. It also set a fairly clever trap for clouds. As I mentioned earlier in our tour, our prevailing weather patterns here do move from east to west. This notch here allows these clouds to come wandering in. Once they make it back here, though, they get stuck. Their forces circulate around until they've shed that rain, that water, allowing that air mass to then lighten up and lift out of here. Now, it's pretty wild to think about that juxtaposition, right? That at one point, this was a very active, very inhospitable volcano full of sulfur, lava, fire, only for today to have it be this cool, green, lush place home to one of the wettest spots on Earth where water literally flows out of the rock itself. And that water, seemingly appearing out of nowhere, is actually making its way down from the top of the Alakai Swamp, filtering its way through the porous lava rock and emerging here as the headwaters to the Wailua River. Wailua River is the longest navigable river in the state of Hawaii. This is, of course, well above the navigable portion of it, but it all starts right here at the heart of this ancient volcano. Pretty wild. Now from here we are going to be making our way back to the airport, and along the route there are still a couple of landmarks I can point out, things I can talk a little bit about. I'd also be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have at this stage, anything that maybe I mentioned you want to hear more about, or perhaps something that I didn't talk at all about that you're curious about. Does anybody have any questions for me at this stage? I'm speechless and in awe at the beauty and majesty of our emerald little island here. Totally understandable. All right. Well, over the course of the tour, I've talked a bit about Kauai's geologic history. I mentioned back in the canyon that Kauai was formed in 3 periods of volcanic activity. That first period occurred about 5.1 million years ago. There were subsequent periods of eruptions 4 million years ago, and then the last time Kauai saw an active volcano on it was 1.6 million years ago. It's been quite a while. Now, the crater left behind from that last volcano is actually just off our nose to the right. The slight rise we see in the terrain here is the Kilahana crater. While it's nowhere near as impressive or as imposing as Waialeale, it did play an integral role in the formation of the island as we know it today, as it formed the plains of the east side. So all the flat stuff around us here today was all formed by little old Kilahana, again about 1.6 million years ago. Now from here we can actually see the far rim of the crater. So looking just off to our 1 o'clock, you can see the tree line, and then just below the tree line at the high point, it turns to a light green. That is all uluhe and native fern, and makes up the sidewall of the crater there. When Kauai was in its prime, when it was as big as it ever was, it was just shy of 9,000 feet tall. Today, the tallest point on the island is Kauai, which is the southern peak of the crater, and is just over 5,200 feet above sea level. So Kauai is just shy, or just over half the size that it once was. But it was never as big as Maui is today, or the Big Island are. Pretty interesting. At this stage, I need to sign off with y'all for just a moment. I need to get our weather, our initial clearances, and then I'll be back with you briefly before needing to sign off until we're back on the ground. Sit back, relax, enjoy the views. I'll be right back with you. So coming up ahead of us here, this is the Kauai Reservoir. This little body of water was where they shot about 90% of Jungle Cruise, a Disney movie with The Rock in it, came out last summer. This area is also where most of Tropic Thunder was filmed, as well as various scenes out of Jurassic Park. Over the years, something like 80 different movies have been filmed here on the island of Kauai. Kauai and Hollywood certainly have quite a long history together. Needless to say, that is a tour in and of itself. Sadly, though, one for another time, as our tour is coming to a close. Now, when we approach the ridgeline out ahead of us, I'm going to need to sign off with you until we're back on the ground. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all for flying with me today. I hope you've enjoyed the tour. I hope you have a great day, a fantastic stay here on the island, and a safe trip home. When we do get back on the ground, if you would please keep your headsets on, keep your seatbelts fastened just until you see the ground crew making their way over to us. At which point, feel free to unbuckle your seatbelts. You can remove your headsets and start making moves to help the ground crew help you out of here. If you got any photos, videos that you're excited about sharing on social media, we encourage you to do so, and we love it when you tag us in those posts. We're just at Sunshine Helicopters on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Love to see what y'all saw and got excited about. Plus, it makes me look good for my boss, because that way he knows I'm actually out here taking you around and showing you all these sites. So I appreciate it on a personal level. But once again, we are going to be on the ground momentarily. I'll be back with you once we are. Thank you again for your time and attention. It's been a pleasure. Welcome back to Terra Firma, everybody. Ground crew is going to be out here in just a moment. Feel free to undo those seatbelts. You can remove your headsets. Y'all have fun here on Kauai. We'll look forward to seeing you all next time. You're very welcome. welcome. Thank you.